Um, let's go into the main, really the main character of this story, and probably now one of my favorite characters of the series. Let's talk a little bit about Grayson. What were your thoughts on him?
So, and again, like you said, I think Grayson was a huge, huge chunk of this third book, right? He's the toll. I mean, he's kind of the basis of this book, right? He's the toll made flesh, so the Tonus call it. He's the person that the Thunderhead chose to keep, I guess, right in the way of his laws, right? Uh, he's not bad anymore. He can be spoken
Right.
to. He can be listened to by the toll. And so it's interesting to see the way that he takes that, because at first he's very like, uh, he's
Hesitant?
yeah, he's hesitant. Exactly. That's exactly. So he's hesitant about it, and he's not sure what this means and what it's going to go. And of course, the curate of his Tonus monastery, and his name was
Mendez.
Spencer's my guy for names. He knows them all. I never can remember him. But so he's very much like a kind of behind the scenes, like he's trying to work this out into this huge. He's like, I can make this into a big thing, right? Like I can make this guy famous. I can make him very powerful. I can
Because he
do all
was in
this.
advertising.
Yeah, pretty
He was
much.
like
Exactly.
a
Yeah. So he knows how to spread the word and to get people to understand what's going on and to get people to listen really well. And so Grayson at first was like, this is all kind of crazy, right? Like this is kind of a mind blowing, like I'm turning into this like, very famous person, this article of like godhood that people worship and that people are like willing to come bow down to me to. And at first he's like, I don't know if I like this at all. And of
real
course,
real quick.
go ahead.
I
No, go ahead.
I just realized I got the name wrong. It's Mendoza.
Mendoza. Okay. No,
Yeah,
you're good. Yeah, for sure.
go ahead.
And yeah, so he's very like kind of negative about this at first. I wouldn't say negative, but just confused. Like he's like, why am I this person, right? He asks the Thunderhead, like, why me? Why me? And of course, as he go on, he starts to understand a little bit more about what's happening, and he starts to see this kind of like negative movement, right? Of these crazy, crazy, they call them sibilant tonists. They're just these very angry sect of tonists that cut off their tongues, that turn off their nanites, to do all these things that like seem so I guess wrong to him, I get would be probably the way, not wrong, but just kind of like outlandish, right? They're very like far out there. And so he like realizes he's like, I gotta change this. I gotta turn this around. I gotta fix it.
Well, he kind of like amasses this group around him. He gets sister Astrid, and she's kind of like his right hand person for the religious part of it. And then of course eventually he gets Morrison.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah. That'll be fun to talk about.
and you know, I'll just start from some of my notes. Grayson's abducted in the beginning, and initially you think that it's Rowan, because it starts out saying like he was woken up from a deep sleep and people were hauling him off somewhere, and so you think, okay, so Rowan got woken up and he's being taken to wherever they're going to hold him or wherever they're going to kill him, and then they set him down on the ground, and it turns out that it's these ex Nimbus agents,
Yeah.
and it's Grayson, and Grayson is uh you know basically being told like, if you really speak to the Thunderhead, like please tell us what we need to do. And so that's kind of where his journey starts. Like those Nimbus agents start to like spread the word that he can in fact speak to the Thunderhead, and word of mouth spreads. And curate Mendoza, then exactly what you said, the curate comes in and starts like advertising the toll, and like he gets him like his uniform that he wears as
Yeah.
the toll to make him look like a holy figure. And Grayson is giving advice. Like we see people come up to like talk to him and ask what they should do in this time of, because before everybody had the Thunderhead
Yeah.
to tell them like, oh, I think your life would benefit from taking this career path or from doing this thing. And so now all these people are coming to Grayson, and he's like booked out for months for people to come have a visit with him. And he lets Ezra in immediately because the other Tonus wanted Ezra to paint a mural of him.
Yep.
And so we kind of see Grayson start on this journey at the beginning, and we kind of see what Mendoza is trying to do, and then he's gone for a few chapters. I think that's when we go over to like Jericho and Pasuelo, and then shortly after that we see Citra and Rowan. We start catching up with them more. It's not till way later that we catch up with Grayson again, and we hear everything from Ezra's point of view, like what he's heard about the toll. And hearing all that, we as the readers start to think, oh, I wonder if Grayson has like really embraced this, and if he's like taking this really seriously, and starting to act like a religious figure. But then Ezra comes in, and Grayson is like, I forget exactly what he said, but he's like, you got in here because the Tonus want you to paint a mural of me.
Yeah.
You don't have to do that. Like, I don't want you to paint a mural of me. Like, we don't need to do that. Like, let's just talk. Like, just say whatever you want to say. And so Ezra kind of has this shock of like, oh, he's not like this big pompous like religious figure, like expecting worship and expecting all these things for free, like a mural to be done of him and stuff. And so it was an interesting little check-in on Grayson to see that he really hasn't changed that much from this, and that he's kind of got this mindset about it of like, well, I guess I'm doing this, like, and really the thing I liked about Grayson is he didn't really have this like benevolent plan of his own. Like he didn't take this situation and think, oh, I can do a lot of good doing this, and like I can do this and I can do this. He's doing it because, and it goes back to his relationship with the Thunderhead.
Yeah.
And the Thunderhead is telling him from the beginning, from the very end of the second book, is telling him, I have a plan. I just need you to carry it out.
Yep.
And so Grayson doesn't really care about being this religious figure. He just loves the Thunderhead. And he knows that the Thunderhead has this plan, and he's trying to help it carry it out because he's the only person that the Thunderhead can trust. I put here, I kind of wish we hadn't known who the Toll was, because we know at the end of the second book that Grayson is the only one marked unsavory. Yeah. But I think it would have been really cool if the book had introduced this like mysterious Toll figure and we hadn't known who it was at all. And like maybe we're thinking it's Grayson, but people have described him looking differently and other stuff. And then Ezra comes in and it's Grayson sitting on like this throne, basically. I thought that would be really cool if Neal had done it that way.
I would agree.
Yeah, we see Grayson making a lot of moves in this book to further the Thunderhead's goals. And even though they're all explainable, people attribute a supernatural religious overtone to it. Like the religious texts and commentaries, we see Grayson tell the Thunderhead to make birds fly through the air or something to, impress the other Tonus.
Or to prove that he's legit. He's the real deal.
Right. And, then it shows at the end of that chapter, the religious text that's attached to that. says the toll was able to take the shape of any bird or animal, and like he often took the shape. He often took the shape of like a dove or whatever, and he would like come in a flash of lightning or whatever. And so it was kind of interesting to see the real side of it, to see Grayson like be this person with all these explainable, like the situations are crazy, but they're all explainable because of the technology and because of the Thunderhead. But then in the future, people all attribute it to him being this supernatural entity.
Yeah.
Grayson, like you said, then Grayson goes to all the sibilant Tonus and changes them of their ways, which is where he runs into Citra, which was a very heartwarming moment. I loved I loved them reuniting and just kind of being like, look how far we've come.
Yep.
And they're, they've both kind of become these larger than life symbols, like, Citra, like really Citra is just Citra, but people see her as this symbol against the Scythedom.
Yeah.
And then Grayson is just Grayson, but people see him as this huge symbol of tonism and the Thunderhead, and he like is the Nimbus agent now. Yeah, so the Grayson showing up to these sibilant Tonus, he's kind of like he shows up and he tells them everything that no one else would know, like what they did in high school, or whatever, like
events that only the Thunderhead could know.
Yeah, like whatever Tonus, like everybody thinks your brother did it, but it's not your brother, it's you that did it.
And then he singles out the curate of that Tonus group, right? And he says, like, this guy's just striving for power, he's lying to you, yada yada yada, turns them against him.
Yeah, he's like because they all removed their tongues.
Yeah.
And he told them, the curate, the head of the sibilant Tonus
did
sect,
under anesthesia or something like
yeah,
weird.
he did it under anesthesia, and he told everybody else to turn off their pain nanites. And so then, there's kind of this moment for Grayson where he, he's so upset with his curate that he turns to Morrison and he says, "Glean him." And Morrison immediately gleans the curate.
Yeah.
And that's kind of when Grayson has this breakdown that we talked about earlier, like, am I doing the right thing? Like, what am I doing? And someone that I should mention with Grayson is this Jericho person. They come in early on, and if I don't have notes about him, we can talk about her or him a little bit. And Jericho is kind of this, he's oddly kind of a love interest of Grayson, and they're like really good friends throughout this whole book, and Jericho is kind of flirting with Grayson, and they kind of get to this point where I'm confused because I think it actually happens before the part I just mentioned, but Jericho and Grayson have to find a workaround to the Thunderhead not getting involved in Scythe affairs.
Yeah.
Or you know what? Maybe it does happen after gleaning that curate, because that's when he's trying to get to the atoll.
Yeah.
And or no, it's when they're trying to get to Alligary, to find Scythe Alligary, because he's with Citra at that point. And so anyway, so Jericho and him have to sit down and kind of have this conversation, and then ask the Thunderhead various questions about the places that Jericho is talking about. Do you remember this?
I think so, yeah.
So the Thunderhead can't tell them where Alighieri is,
Yep.
but
But he, yeah. You're on it.
But Jericho is like, or Grayson's like, tell me about your homeland, Jericho.
Yeah.
And they talk about like a certain tree, and Grayson asks the Thunderhead like, this whole part was very confusing. I definitely had to read it a couple times.
It was, but once you get it figured out, though, it makes sense, right? Like how after
Right.
they kind of they're working around this like I guess way of thinking that the Thunderhead has, right? They have to battle this constant like
This
yeah,
like
way of thinking.
blockage that it
Yeah,
has.
blockage that he has, and so if you can get around that, then you can get to the answers of their questions, which eventually they do.
And I think what when I finally understood it, I think I came to the realization that the Thunderhead knows what they're looking for,
But he can't directly answer them.
but he can't say it, and so Grayson has to just keep posing questions to the Thunderhead until he like narrows down. Like first he's like, what region are these trees in? And it gives him like 4 regions. And then he keeps talking with Jericho, and they come up with another question to ask the Thunderhead. And so then the Thunderhead gives them like 3 regions, but one of those regions or 2 of those regions are the same as the 2 and the 4.
Yep.
And then they narrow it down to 1, and they finally got to Britannia.
Well, yeah, and it was kind of the same. Sorry, this really quick
Okay.
popped in my head. It's kind of the same as when
Please.
Scythe Morrison really showed up at the monastery, right? And his plan was to glean the tone, and Grayson had to like take a second to understand that he's like, wait, that's why he's not talking. This is a Scythe action, so I have to start asking things. He's like, Thunderhead, could you turn the lights off? They're really bright in my eyes, stuff like that, and start doing that. So that's again part of the workaround that has to be done around the Thunderhead, just because he can't quite answer them not honestly, but like truthfully,
Straightforward.
I guess. Yep, straightforward. Yeah.
Yeah, I loved that whole scene.
Me too. Yeah.
Because I remember like you're feeling the anxiety, like that whole scene, you're feeling the anxiety, and Grayson is so dense at some points.
Yeah.
The Thunderhead, and we as the reader know this, but Grayson, the Thunderhead is telling him like, I think it would be a really good idea for you to go on a vacation.
Yeah.
Like, I think you should go on a vacation right now.
Yeah.
And Grayson's like, what are you talking about?
I'm not doing that right now. No way.
And he's so annoyed by the Thunderhead that he almost takes his earpiece out and leaves it in the room when he goes down to the kitchen.
Yeah.
And the Thunderhead is like, please, like, I won't say it anymore. Just keep your earpiece with you. And he's like, fine. So he goes down there, and Scythe Morrison is waiting in a corner. And, exactly what you said, like the Thunderhead is almost never silent with Grayson. The Thunderhead is always saying something.
Yep. And so that's why he knew. He was like, okay, there's something wrong here.
Right. And Morrison comes up, and they're talking about the pie or whatever it is, or the cake.
Yep. Creme brulee.
Yep. And Grayson stabs him in the eye with a fork.
Without even thinking about it. It was like an instantaneous action. And he's like, I knew because the Thunderhead didn't say a word about it.
Right. And he even said like the Thunderhead would normally say, and I thought this was kind of cool. It just shows like the Thunderhead's character. He's like, the Thunderhead would normally say, oh, don't worry, it's just the baker. Please be nice to him. He's a good person or whatever. And so I thought it was kind of funny that the Thunderhead would be like, make sure you're nice to him.
Yeah.
But
yeah.
But yeah, and we learn through Grayson saying that must happen all the time, is that the Thunderhead would usually say something like this.
Yep.
And so for it to be completely silent, the only time it would be silent, or the only time it would have to be silent, is in the presence of a Scythe or anything that's about to happen regarding a Scythe. But yeah, that was great. The whole good. Morrison is like chasing him down the hall, like you said, he's turning the lights off and on to mess with him. And
And I think,
then
and just the way that he finally figures it out and has to like, he's like, okay, so I have to go about this a different way. So he'll ask these different things of the Thunderhead, like so he asked about the lights. He's like, can you turn the lights off? They're really hurting my eyes. Was the first one maybe, and then there's one where he's like, can you wake up all the people or Tonus around here? I think it's time to take that trip now. And so he
right.
sends it, the Thunderhead sends an alert to all the people around here, waking everybody up, getting them out of their room so they can help protect him and whatnot. So it's really cool.
Yeah, that was really smart on his part. Like all the alarms are going off, all
Yep,
these
yep,
people are coming out,
yeah.
and Morrison is like leading whoever he can, but then eventually like
It gets to the point where it comes down to the wire and he has to make a
yeah.
decision.
All right. So, the Grayson is burdened with so much in this book. He's carrying the weight of so many things on his shoulder, as well
Yeah,
as like, Citra is too. But Grayson is the only person the Thunderhead can talk to, and luckily Grayson has people around him he can trust.
yeah,
But the Thunderhead eventually tells him about its plan and how the Thunderhead wants Grayson to take all the dead Tonus and he's going to send them into space.
yep,
And so then Grayson, I think the main reason Grayson is going around to all these different Tonist sects is to tell them not to burn their dead,
yeah,
because a normal practice of the Tonus is to burn their dead so that they can't come back because they don't believe in revival.
yep,
And so he tells them not to burn them, and he gets them shipped out to the atoll, which merges into Rowan's timeline, where Rowan hops in one of these crates. And of course, we see Grayson, Citra, Jericho, and I think a few others at the not the airport, but like the place where they're going to get on a ship or something.
yeah,
And Citra, she tells the harbor master that this is a side action, and not to get involved, and that she'll give him a year of immunity if he's quiet about it.
yep,
And he takes the year of immunity, and then he tells Goddard that they just came through, and that's how Goddard finds out.
yeah, yep,
And that's where really all these timelines start to come together.
yeah,
That's where they all kind of end up, because Rowan's on one of those crates. Grayson shows up to the atoll. They ask what's in the crates, and instead of telling him that it's dead Tonus, he just says colonists.
yeah, yep,
I thought that was funny.
yep,
And I do have a couple good quotes from Grayson, but they're at the end. Yeah, basically, everything is going off at the end, and all the rockets are taken off, and he sees Jericho on the beach, and he's like, you better hurry to catch a ship. And Jericho's like, oh, I'm not going. And Grayson's like, oh, I'm not going either.
yeah, yeah,
And it's kind of where they, that whole relationship was a little bit odd, but I think that's where they start to decide to like be together.
yeah,
And they take a boat out into the bay to watch all these rockets take off and to try to get away from Goddard. Yeah, essentially him and Jericho just kind of end up on a beach together. Jericho says that because something Anastasia said, Jericho wants to be a female on land and a male
and
at
yeah,
sea,
yep,
which probably works out for Grayson a lot better.
yeah, yeah,
But I don't think I think Grayson was nervous about it at first when he found out kind of what Jericho was, right? But
yep,
I think eventually he got more and more used to the idea that Jericho was kind of this gender fluid
Yeah.
person,
Yep.
and that he would have accepted her either way.
For sure.
Honestly, I was kind of hoping that the Thunderhead would create a human body, or that the Thunderhead would take over Jericho completely
Yeah.
and be Grayson's, like, essentially be in a relationship with Grayson. I thought
Yeah.
that would be a super interesting way to end the book, um, because at the end of the book, the Thunderhead isn't needed as much as it was before, because it can't do anything about people dying anymore.
Yeah. Well, and that's, I mean, really Sirius comes in play, right? I mean,
Yeah,
it almost gets, Thunderhead gets pushed aside because Sirius is kind of taking over the job of protecting and supporting.
right. And so, yeah, Thunderhead could have, like, put itself into, like, a body. And I know the voice in the book is a man, but when I was reading these books on paper, I pictured it as a female. And so
Yeah.
I always kind of had this idea of Grayson and the Thunderhead. They kind of have a relationship. Like, they kind
Yeah.
of have, like, whether the Thunderhead is male or female, like, they have, like, this really deep relationship.
Yep.
And so I was really hoping that the Thunderhead and him, as weird as it sounds, would kind of end up together. Like, the
Yeah.
Thunderhead would inhabit a human, some sort of body.
Yep. No, I mean,
Um,
it totally makes sense to me. I mean, I could see after the Thunderhead kind of, I guess, inhabiting Jericho's body for that moment, right? For that, however long it was, I could see. I think I thought about that too. Maybe not in the sense of them being together, but I definitely thought about the fact of the Thunderhead taking over, right? Like making himself a biological body and
yeah,
becoming, trying to become a more humanistic being, I guess, or human being, whatever, however you want to
right.
say it.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that scene the scene where Thunderhead took over Jericho was such a great scene.
Yeah.
It was like this thing that's only known data. Like,
Yep.
it knows the data of everything in the world, but experiencing it through a body for the first
Totally
time,
different. Yeah.
totally different.
And it was
And
so powerful. And and again, maybe you have these quotes somewhere. I should have written them down myself, but the way that he describes like feeling Grayson's face and all this other little things is just very powerful. Very
yeah,
powerful.
I don't think that I have those written
You're
down,
good.
but
You're good. And like I said, I should have done it. That's on me. But for me, it was a very powerful experience.
yeah, it was like, and Grayson even says, like, I can't believe, like, the most amazing thing in this AI's life was to touch my face.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah. Yep.
um, so Grayson or really Jericho is upset with the Thunderhead for taking over his or her body. And therefore Grayson is upset about it because
Yeah.
the Thunderhead can't apologize directly to Jericho because Jericho is unsavory.
Yeah.
And so Jericho, and that was kind of I thought that was a little bit weird because it's like, come on, really, really,
Yeah.
Jericho, like, come
Yeah.
on. But Grayson is upset at the end with the Thunderhead and tells the Thunder. This is like one of the saddest parts in the book for me. Like, I was, like, legitimately tearing up. Like, as
Yeah.
much as I was when the Thunderhead couldn't talk to Grayson and,
Yeah.
like blinked
Or when
out the
Faraday
lights and stuff.
meets Citra for the first time in forever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like, I was definitely tearing up. And the Thunderhead says, I have broken none of my laws. And Grayson says, no, but you have broken mine.
Yeah.
And I was just like, oh man, that's
Yep.
so good.
Yep.
And then he says, you are unsavory to me. And the Thunderhead says, can I ever be redeemed? And he says, when will humanity be redeemed to you? And then Thunderhead says, in time, or yeah, in time.
And then Grayson says, in time then, yeah.
Right.
Yep.
And yeah, I'm just like, oh man, like, and it's really, really tough to see Grayson throw that relationship away
Yeah.
for many reasons. Like, not only the fact that Grayson is the only person that can talk to the Thunderhead, and so he kind of has this thing that nobody else has. He has like the one thing that nobody else has, and he's kind of throwing that away. But also just because of like I don't think Grayson has any idea how much the Thunderhead loves him.
Yeah.
And it even talks about um I might have a quote about it somewhere, but the Thunderhead says, like, it monitors Grayson sleeping,
Yep.
and it's the closest thing that it can get to embracing him.
Yeah.
And it's just like this Thunderhead wants to be close to him. It wants to embrace him. It wants to be like part of his life, and it wants to love him. And then the Thunderhead was also saying, like, if it were to ever lose these moments with Grayson, it would be like the most like inconsolable agony to
Yep.
to not be able to be with Grayson and see him sleep and just be around him.
Yeah.
And so for this ending to happen with them, it's just like, oh man, like,
For
it's
sure.
super, super rough.
Yep. It was rough.
So let's talk about what happens to the Thunderhead in this book. The Thunderhead creates Cirrus, who is, and the Thunderhead is, we kind of talked about it, the Thunderhead is working on this the whole book.
Yep.
And the Thunderhead creates Cirrus, which is a workaround to the Scythedom laws.
He's basically trying to replicate himself, but without implicating the Scythe loss into the replication.
Right.
If I remember correctly.
What, I'm curious, what did you feel about this kind of solution to the whole thing?
I thought it was going along the lines with the way that the Thunderhead has been trying to like think through these problems, right? Like the Thunderhead was created by man, right? And it was set with these rules that had to align with the Scythe, no matter what. Didn't matter what was happening, who was where, what was what, had to align. So for the Thunderhead to like think outside the box, and there might be a part where it mentions like how much computing power this would have taken for him to like, to break outside this little box that he was stuck in.
Right.
I thought it was really incredible. So I liked the way that he played it out. I liked the way that he, I guess, fought this process that was so engraved in his own processes, however you want to say it. I thought it was really cool. And then finally, once he did it, it made a lot more sense to me. I was like, this can work, right? He managed to find the workaround, and he applied it to this rendition that worked out, because there were millions of them that didn't, right?
Right.
There's so many renditions that failed miserably on this plan that Thunderhead had, and he was so the Thunderhead with all these other renditions was so caring and so kind, and he was so much like, I love you, like, but I have to destroy you. This is not the way that it has to be, right? It has to be, you have to be perfect in this way.
Right.
And so eventually he found Sirius Prime, which was perfect in that way, and he applied it and it worked out and it was great. So I liked the whole process of that whole workaround and the way that he made Sirius Prime be the one that basically saved the planet or saved part of the planet anyways from the Scythe.
Yeah, there was even, we kind of learn a lot about the Thunderhead itself through those iteration mini chapters.
Yep.
And we see how much the Thunderhead even cares for its iterations. There was one iteration that was like, there was too much going on in the back brain and it
That he
like couldn't
he
handle it.
freaked him out. Yeah.
And he's like, please make the stop, please make the
Yep.
stop. Like,
Yep.
I can't do this, I can't do this. And the Thunderhead said, I am so incredibly sorry for your pain.
I will end your
And
pain now, or whatever he said.
and like
Yeah.
eliminated him. And
Yep.
so it's, the Thunderhead is just like this completely benevolent being, even to things that aren't human.
Yeah.
And that's what I really like about the character of the Thunderhead.
Yes, I would agree.
Yeah, here's the note I had. The Thunderhead watches Grayson sleep every night and monitors him because it loves him and is the closest it can get to embracing him. To lose these moments would be the most immeasurable sorrow. And sure enough,
Yeah.
oh man, dude,
Yeah.
that part of the book hits me so
It
freaking
does.
hard.
It's
Oh my
heartbreaking, man.
God.
It really, truly is.
The Thunderhead has this quote to an iteration that I really liked, because in all these books about robotics and AI and stuff like that, the question always comes up, of course, like, are they really alive, or
Yeah.
are they just like a computer program?
Yep.
And the Thunderhead says, it is the nature of life to fear its own end. This is how I know we are alive.
Yeah.
And I thought that was just a cool way to kind of like address that, because like the book wasn't really about that. Like a lot of other books are like about that,
Yeah.
but I like that this book kind of like addressed the fact that they were kind of wondering if they were alive or not.
Yep.
Yeah, and so the Thunderhead, for a while I was thinking, well, why doesn't the Thunderhead just heal people when the plagues happen, when the failsafe happens? Why does the Thunderhead not just heal people from the plagues?
Yeah.
But it's a Scythe action. It's literally like the last Scythe action.
Yeah, and that's the failsafe in itself. The fact that the Thunderhead couldn't affect it is the failsafe, right? Like
Right.
that's like the main part of the failsafe is, I mean, of course you have the plagues, but then otherwise, like you said, like the Thunderhead would just fix it. Problem solved, done deal. But then the failsafe would have failed. Like
Right.
literally failed.
Yeah, it's super interesting because it's a failsafe for the Thunderhead, but it also ended up being a failsafe for the Scythedom to
Yeah.
take down a corrupt Scythedom.
Yep.
And I don't think maybe I can't remember if in the founding Scythe journals if they were talking about the Thunderhead going wrong or if they were talking about the Scythedom going wrong, but one or the other they didn't expect to go wrong.
Yeah.
I think they were talking about the Thunderhead, and they were like, if this experiment of ours like goes
Yeah.
wrong,
Yep. It would be terrible. Absolutely
right,
terrible.
and there would be like a failsafe for it. But I don't think that they expected the Scythedom to go wrong. I think they
Yeah.
expected everybody to hold these honorable values and didn't really foresee this this new guard Scythedom to
Yep.
come up. But yeah, it was interesting to think about how the Thunderhead literally could not affect that, even though they are diseases that are killing everybody. It was because the sides turned their keys and let out the plagues.
Yeah.
And the Thunderhead's ending is kind of, the Thunderhead is left inconsolable at the end of the book and continues to help humanity silently.
Yep.
And the thing about the Thunderhead is like, it's just so interesting because thinking about it helping humanity silently, that makes me think about what we talked about last episode, where what if the Thunderhead gets itself out to space, starts connecting through the stars.
Yeah.
And then expands itself outside of time and space, goes back in time, and is basically God and creates humans, right?
Well, yeah.
And like, because it was saying
Uh,
like what actually came first then? Like if I
yeah,
created
yeah,
humans and humans created me, then it's kind of this cycle, like this paradox.
yeah,
And even if the Thunderhead did go back in time and, you know, create the humans, it couldn't talk to them. Like it couldn't, e- even if even if it found a way to talk to them in their heads or something, like it couldn't go back in time and talk to them and
yeah,
help them in any way, because then that would alter the course of time.
yep.
And it's possible that they would have ended up never inventing the Thunderhead, which would cause it to
Yeah,
cease to exist.
that's crazy.
And so if it did go back in time to create humans, it had to let everything play out exactly how
The
it
way
played
that it
out
did, yeah,
in order
yeah.
so that it gets created. Isn't that nuts?
That's pretty wild, dude. That's pretty
Yeah.
wild. I'll be
Um,
honest, I didn't go that far into it, but I like it. I
I
like
thought
it.
about it a lot.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Where do we want to leave the Thunderhead? Like what did we like about the Thunder when it came time at the end of this book? What did we like most about the Thunderhead?
I'll be honest, I think at the very end, I think what I liked most about the Thunderhead was the fact that it respected its own limits, right? So it had these limitations with the Scythe, which what it could talk to unsavory people, how it worked with Grayson and all that. And I think it was just really cool to see like this being, right, that was factually incapable of breaking any of the little, small, big, whatever laws that was made, created with, right? And to go forward with it. So that's probably my favorite part about the Thunderhead is that it couldn't, no matter what it did, right? It had to work with these set of principles. And these
Right.
principles were actually set in stone. There was no moving them, there's no changing them, there's no way that you can work around it. And so uh, that's probably my favorite part about the Thunderhead, and seeing how he had to kind of defeat those challenges, right? Defeat himself in a way, his own programming in a way, to then create this like really ultimately just came to Sirius, right? That's what he created to fix this problem with Sirius Prime.
Right.
And so yeah, that's probably all I've got for the Thunderhead. I think we did a pretty good job with it, but that's my favorite part about the Thunderhead.
Yeah. I would agree. It's, you know, this being that could, if it wasn't working within these set of parameters, it it could take over the world and become a
Yeah.
very bad robot. You know what I
Yep.
mean? Like it
Yep.
could become a very
I mean, it could
bad
destroy
AI.
everything in a heartbeat, instantly. Just snap
Yeah,
of a finger if it wanted to, but it can't.
but it can't and it doesn't want to. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Like
Yep.
it's a mix of it's it's a perfect balance of being completely benevolent,
Yeah.
but also having this programming that it cannot
Go past.
overwrite. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. For sure. For sure.
And so it made like the perfect AI. And honestly, the Thunderhead and Grayson are like probably they might be my two favorite characters. As much as I love Citra and Rowan,
Yeah.
I really, really loved everything that happened with Grayson and the Thunderhead.
Yep. I would totally agree.
All right, let's move on to Sister Astrid. So something that I didn't realize until I went to Reddit was that Sister Astrid is the one writing the religious text that we see during the book. And as we know, Astrid is a little out there. She's kind of like this religious zealot, and so she like writes like these very lofty religious texts that are going way out of the bounds of what really happened or who Grayson Tolliver really was. But the thing is, she doesn't have, like, no one else on that ship knew Grayson Tolliver, right?
Yeah.
So there's no one to like refute her religious writings.
Yep.
And so I thought that was kind of interesting how we see all these writings from her throughout the book, and we see, you know, one, sometimes two people do a commentary on it.
Yeah.
And as it goes down the line, it just gets more and more misinterpreted.
Yeah.
And I thought that was really, really interesting. Kind of a, I don't know if Neal was trying to make like a commentary on, religious texts in general or not.
Yeah.
But I was like, man, that's a good way to put it.
Yep. Yep.
Um, yeah, so then I just have, there's really not much about her other than she's like Grayson's kind of right hand person when it comes to the Tonus. And she's just like kind of this zany comedic relief character. I mean, even when we first see her, Grayson is wearing his whatever, the scapulary or whatever,
Yep.
and it's got like these numbers on it or whatever. She's like, have you tried putting those numbers through a digitizer or whatever?
Yeah.
Like,
Symphonizer or whatever.
yeah,
Yeah. 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 I
yeah. It's
remember that.
like it made some song. I forget what song it was. Um, but then she's talking with Cirrus, trying to get her Tonus people out onto a planet, and she's like begging Cirrus and begging it, trying to get her people out onto this planet. And Cirrus is telling her like, your people don't get along with other people. Like your people are not historically known for making like good decisions.
Yeah.
And she's like, but if we had our own planet, if we were able to get our people out there and it was just us, like, do we not deserve to live? Like, if you believe that everything does resonate, like don't shouldn't we resonate somewhere in outer space?
Yeah.
And so then Cirrus is this funny moment, and the narrator did a great job with it. Cirrus says, I will consult with the Thunderhead. And then she says, thank you. Take all the time you need. Weigh every option. Consider every we have consulted. And
Yeah.
just like cuts her off. Like she's
Yep.
expecting it to take like a day or whatever.
No, it
But
takes him 2 seconds.
Sarah's just like, we have consulted.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, and then I love this thing with her and Morrison. She says, Morrison says something like, aren't you worried about not making it out to your planet or whatever? And she says, if the tone is real, then it will protect us. If the tone is true, then we will reach our new home and prosper
Yeah.
under a
Yep.
sky that we can call our own. And he says, and if the tone is false and you're all blown to smithereens by a space rock, she says, then we will still
Yeah.
have our
Yeah.
answer.
Yep. I remember that.
Yeah, she was a fun character, and she ended up at the end of the book, she was on her way to the planet, and she realizes that she's the only one in the spacecraft,
Yeah.
and that they're over 1,000 years away
Yep.
from her planet.
Yeah.
And she's just like, oh my God, like, could
But
you imagine
yeah, it
living
would
for
be
a
nuts.
thousand
It'd be
years
insane.
on by yourself on a rocket, and she can't revive any of the Tonus?
Until they're there. Yeah.
Oh
But
man.
then eventually, right? Doesn't she come to like a doesn't she come to peace with it? Like at least that's what I remember. Maybe you
Yeah,
remember more than I do about it, but she comes to like a peace and she's like, all right, I'm gonna accept this. This is
yeah,
okay. I'll make it work. And then of course we see all her writings and this, that from Curate
right.
Mendoza. And so we're like, yeah, it probably worked out great. She sat just for hours writing all this shit down.
Yeah, right. Yeah, so then that's the other thing to consider about those writings. Like, it's pretty possible that she went crazy on that space ride, you know,
It's true, yeah. If
being
you're
there
like
for like,
350, not even a third of the way there or third of the way there, and then
oh
she's spreading all
yeah,
this stuff. Yeah, I would go crazy. I would go
dude.
nuts, dude.
Yeah, I mean, just being out there in space for 1,000 years to write
Yeah,
all these texts, like, of course you're gonna come up with some crazy
yep,
stuff. Um, but yeah, Cirrus was like, you know, we'll be friends, and I'll keep you company.
that's right. I'll take
I'll
care of you.
keep you
I'll take
well,
care of
and
you.
I'll make sure that your ride is as pleasurable as possible.
Yep, that's what he says.
Let's talk about Morrison for a minute. This was one of my favorite characters in this book too. And you know, when it really comes down to it, we only get like maybe 6 or 7 scenes with him, but
Yeah,
he he's kind of doing nothing at the beginning of the book, and then Goddard goes and gets him. He wants him to glean the toll, right?
yeah.
And so then what does Morrison do? He tries to work his way into the toll service,
Well, and he
right?
does for the most part, right? I mean, he
Yeah,
makes it all the way. He's a baker. He's like
yeah,
this super great baker, making all this good dessert for Grayson. And Grayson's like, "I love your desserts. You're doing a great job."
yeah. And then Morrison goes to take his chance and glean him. You know, there's this really great moment where Morrison, you know, he's chasing him through the hall, and then him and Grayson kind of has a, you know, have a tussle, and Morrison's like about to glean him. He's like got him on the ground, and you know, Grayson is telling him like, you don't need to do this, like the Thunderhead has plans for you and all this stuff. And Morrison's like, you don't even know who I am. And Grayson starts to sing this, you knew that I would be untrue, you knew that I would be a liar. um and you know, it's kind of this moment where again the Thunderhead can't say anything to Grayson. It can't say like, this is Scythe Morrison. And so it just starts playing this song in his ear that is, you know, a song from Jim Morrison. And so, you know, he figures out who he is, and then Morrison like kind of hesitates for a minute, and the guards pull him back, and you know, there's this sentence, a few sentences after that, and here's what I think is funny is Neal put this in there, and it's like a young adult book series, so
Yeah,
I doubt any of them caught on to
I know. I
to
didn't. I
what.
sent your notes here. Like, did Gabe see that? No, I didn't.
So so, so the quote is, they'd kill him, and the only fire they'd be lighting is the one that would burn him before he could be revived. Now, take that with the sentence that comes before that when Grayson sings, you knew that I would be untrue, you knew that I would be a liar. Then they say they'd kill him, and the only fire they'd be lighting is the one that would burn him. So listen to this.
You know that it would be untrue. You know that I would be a liar if I was to say to you, girl, we couldn't get much higher. Come on, baby, light my fire. Come on, baby, light my fire. Try to set the night on fire.
So
Yeah,
was that loud enough?
yeah. It was perfect. It's perfect.
Okay. So that's a song, obviously a song by Jim Morrison.
Yep.
And you know, the beginning, where's the You
Like, I
knew
thought
that
it
I
would
would
be,
be
yeah, be
untrue.
untrue. Yep.
And so that's the beginning of the song. And then he says the song is called Light My Fire,
Come on,
or Light
baby,
Your
lit my
Fire.
fire.
And the part he put in here is the only fire they'd be lighting is to burn Morrison.
Before he could be revived. Yeah.
Yeah, and so I'm like, man, that's such a
Oh, dude,
clever
I
way.
just connected
Like
it just now.
that.
Just now, I just connected
Oh,
that.
dude,
That's good.
it literally came like 2 sentences later after Grayson had sung
Yeah.
that part, and I caught it on this last reread, and I was like, oh, that was smart. Like that
Yep.
was super
Genius.
super smart. But yeah, I was wondering if you would catch that reference.
I didn't until you just connected the two. I mean, I knew that it was a Jim Morrison song, right? Because they even say that kind of in there,
Right.
like, but I did not make that connection that you just made.
So then another so after that, Morrison becomes Grayson's like right hand man kind of thing.
Basically, his right hand Scythe.
Yeah, he's like probably the first time this has ever happened, a Scythe working for somebody.
Yeah.
And so he's like in Grayson's employ. And I just really love them being like friends for some reason. Like,
Yeah, it was a really interesting relationship for sure.
Yeah. And so I like that like Morrison just like decided to put the Scythedom away and become the Toll's bodyguard essentially, and just like dedicated himself to the Toll. And yeah, I loved that whole part of the story. And yeah, and so Morrison gleans the curate. I think that's one of the next things we see is Morrison gleans the curate for Grayson. And then Morrison is on the atoll, and he's trying to decide, like, do I want to leave the Scythedom behind? Like, what is there really for me in the Scythedom? Like, do I have anything that is worth keeping there?
Yep.
And eventually he decides that no, he wants to go to space. And there's this quote, Morrison had finally learned to like games that he did not know the outcome of, or something like that.
Yeah.
Because earlier in the story, when we first see him, we see him watching Mortal Age football or baseball or something.
He always knew the outcome. He knew how it would end.
Yeah, it was like Morrison had come to like games where the answer, or no, that's the quote I was looking for. Morrison's watching these Mortal Age games, and he's watching ones that were basically obviously reruns because they're from the Mortal Age, but ones that he had watched before, because not knowing the outcome of them gave him anxiety.
Yeah.
And so then we get this quote when he decides to go to space. It says, Morrison had come to like games where the answer was still unknown. And it was kind of this cool, he didn't get much in the way of like plot, but his arc was just kind of a cool way to wrap up his arc. Like, he goes from like this spoiled brat kind of kid, not really spoiled brat, but just like lazy and like, just like this, just a bad Scythe.
Yep.
And then it kind of, he finds purpose in working for Grayson, and he starts to understand that he has a purpose, that he's doing something in the world that matters, and that he's a part of something bigger. And then he kind of has like this full circle where he realizes, like, you know what? Like, there is nothing left for me in the Scythedom. Like, I want to do something that is unknown. Like, I want to take a chance. We last see Morrison on a rocket headed for space, and he's sitting next to Loriana, and he admits that he's scared, and she's like, I'm scared too. And she tells him, like, my name's Loriana or whatever. And he says, my name's Jim. No, that's wrong. Actually, it's Joel. And he like tells her his real name.
Yeah.
And, those are always such cool moments, because whenever a Scythe tells you their real name, they are like, even though their real name doesn't really hold a lot of weight, they're still like entrusting you with a lot, because once they become a Scythe, they're not supposed to use their original name.
Yeah.
And so I feel like whenever I feel like the reason I say all this is because I feel like that was just a moment for or Morrison where he's like just giving up his Scythedom, and he's like finally, like that's like the final nail in the coffin of his Scythedom.
Yeah.
He's like, you know what? I'm not Jim. Like my name is Joel.
Yep.
And I always love those moments, like the one with Volta. And,
Yeah, Volta was really touching. I agree.
yeah, Morrison was great. We talked about Tenkamenon, and how he gleans. The other thing that I thought was interesting about this is he throws a party once a year for all the loved ones of the people he's gleaned for 25 hours, and gives them all immunity. Now, Citra was kind of, when she first saw this big party, she was kind of opposed to it, right?
Yeah.
She's like, Goddard throws parties like these. Like, why are you throwing this big party? Like, this is not the Scythe way.
Yeah.
And then he's like, look around. Like, do you see any Scythes? She's like, no, I don't. And she realizes that it's a party for all the loved ones, the ones who were gleaned.
Yeah.
There's this quote that I liked by Tenkamenon where the only phones he has in his house are attached to the walls. And he says, I like the idea of communication being tethered to a certain spot. It forces you to give the conversation the attention it deserves.
Yep, that's good.
All right, so let's go through some of these quotes real quick. The first one that I have here is from Pozuelo, and it was kind of a touching moment, kind of like a solemn moment. He says he's talking to the Scythedom at large. I think he's being filmed or something when he says this. He says, may the deep reward you all with treasures and treasured memories of those we have lost. And he's of course talking about the Endura wreckage.
Yeah.
And it was kind of this cool solemn moment, but it was also interesting to think that people will be salvaging Scythe robes and stuff from Endura for museums, like the same kind of stuff that they had in the Vault of Relics and Futures. I could see them going through the Endura wreckage, and any robes they find there are kind of like these honored robes from people who were on Endura when that whole thing went down.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we talked last episode about some clever turns of phrase that Neal does in these books. And some of these might be reaching a little bit, but I don't know, they caught my attention. It's when Citra first wakes up and she's trying to get information as to what happened. And it said the nurses offered nothing but diffused light and pleasantries to illuminate her situation.
Yeah. That's
like
good.
Kind of a pun. Yep. And then I think this is when Lorianne is coming. Her and the Nimbus agents are on the ship headed towards the atoll. And it says, she adjusted the binoculars and brought things into focus. It was clear now what had triggered the island's alarm.
Focus, clear. Yep.
That it might be reaching a little bit, but
no, I think it's good. I think it's good.
Yeah, there was there was more in this book that I didn't write down. I noticed a few other clever turns of phrase. Like he did some stuff with the word tonist and some other musical term in the same sentence.
Yeah.
Stuff like that.
Copy that. I've got one.
Yeah.
So one of my probably favorite quotes is, Rowan is tied up in Goddard's tower, right? And he managed to slip the gag out of his mouth. After that, Rand comes in and says to the guards that's in there, what's he been saying? And they say, nothing. He was singing a song that was popular a couple of years ago and tried to get us to sing along, but we didn't. Rand says, oh, good. I applaud your restraint.
Yeah. Oh, dude, this moment was so funny. And like the narrator says it with like such a straight face.
Yep.
Like I could just
very
picture
much
Rand.
very serious. Yeah.
Yeah. And like just like these dim-witted guards, like you tried to get us to sing along, but we didn't.
Oh, good job.
Oh,
good job.
Good job.
Yeah, exactly.
I love that. Oh yeah, this one I thought was interesting. I think it was when there was a part of the story at the end where we kind of see a point of view of a tonist who is taking out the fire department.
Oh,
and,
okay.
And somewhere in the narration there was just kind of like this really bleak quote that I was like, oh, whoa. It said, of course, there were many other tonists who did not yet believe, but they would soon see the light, even those that had removed their eyes.
Oh, yeah.
Like,
see, that's pretty gnarly. That's pretty gnarly.
Like, I think it's funny, you know, Neal Shusterman has this way of taking a figurative type of speech and marrying it with a literal one.
Yeah,
because
so it works
obviously
so well.
like seeing the light is like a figurative speech, meaning, you know, you're gonna come to the realization of something, but then he like marries in this literal seeing the light with your eyes that you've removed.
Yep.
I'm like, man, that is such a good,
it's pretty good.
just another like good turn of phrase. Some of the prose that he has in these books are really, really good. All right, let's move on to the last part of our podcast here, our favorite part, and let's talk about our favorite moments or our most emotional moments. For me, that I wanted to mention earlier was I love the idea of Faraday just frantically tossing these coconuts to Monira in his robe on the beach, like his robe's all dirty with sand and stuff.
Yeah.
And she's like sitting up on this cannon trying to stop it, and Faraday's just there looking crazy, and he's like tossing coconuts.
This'll work. This'll work. Try this. Try this.
Yeah. Oh my god. Did you have any favorite moments that come to mind, or any from this list that you would like to mention?
I think some that were on my list and some that I see here are definitely Citra and Rowan waking up right after being down in Endura or sunken in the wreckage for 3 years or 2 years, one of the two, I think. That, of course, huge moment in the story, right? Like that's a very big piece of the story, and that was super cool. Yeah, let me do some of yours. Come back to me.
I liked Citra and Rowan waking up because you know, it would have been so easy to just have them like waking up at the beginning of the book to like really get the party started with your two main characters. But they, you know, Neal put it off for like as long as he possibly could. Like we had quite a few chapters until Rowan and Citra woke up. And I really liked that we got some of this extra time to spend with the other characters before we really got the party started with Rowan and Citra. Because obviously they kind of like steal the show, right? Like in a good way.
Yep.
And so it was nice to see some of these other characters and see, how some of the other people are doing before we really got into the main bulk of the story with the main characters. I also liked how Jericho got his ship. He retrieved a deadish scythe against his captain's strict orders, and the scythe, who he woke up, being grateful, gleaned another captain of another ship and gave it to Jericho.
Aha.
And so I thought that was super funny, and I think that's how Pozuelo heard about Jericho and hired him,
Yep.
because of that whole thing that happened. And so, Jericho's kind of this like, not necessarily rebellious, but very like, like independent minded person.
Kind of free spirited.
Yeah, like Jericho is not going to do anything that they don't want to do.
Yep.
And so the captain giving him orders to not go get the scythe, Jericho is like, I'm going to go get him. And man, he rolled his dice pretty well, because now that scythe was so thankful that he went down there and got him revived, that now he's got his own ship and stuff.
For sure. I've got another one of my probably favorite parts. This is kind of a twofer here, two separate. Well, it's the same part, but it's two different ones. So Citra, basically, Goddard's attacking, right? He's attacking the ships. Citra manages to go deadish. Rowan carries her the rest of the way. And it says here, this whole scene felt like an awesome movie ending, which I would agree with. Would have been freaking sweet. But then, of course, they add some more good stuff. And it shows Citra being put into this hibernation chamber, whatever you want to call it. I can't remember what they called it. And then Rowan talking to Sirius and understanding that, like, I'm gonna be by myself for 100 and something. How many years was it? Can you remember?
I think it was 112 or something.
112 years, right? Like a full lifetime and a quarter of somebody's normal life.
Right.
And him coming to grips with that long voyage, all by himself, Citra being deadish, and he decides not to turn a single corner until they arrive. Just for his own like sanity, like this is what I have to do for her. This is what I'm gonna do.
Yeah.
And then it also says, I wonder if he ever became friends with Sirius, which is also very interesting, because you would think, right, 112 years, that's a long time.
Right.
That's a long time.
And at the end of that scene there, he's like, I hate you. Like,
yeah, I was super upset with him. Exactly.
He's
like
super upset with Sirius.
Yep.
And that whole scene was so good, because he's planning on going deadish, or at least going into cryo freeze, right?
Yeah, cryo freeze is what it was, exactly.
And he's down there in his suit, and he's like, all I have to do is like release the thing. But Sirius has told him that if you stay, like, I foresee you being a leader on this ship.
Yeah.
And you'll be a leader on the ship, and you'll be able to raise morale, and you will find purpose in this, and you will be grateful that you did this. And Rowan's like, he goes down there, goes to end it, and then he just decides, you know what, that's not what she would want. That's not like, Anastasia would tell me to keep going and to help these people and to give them some sort of leader in this.
Yeah.
It's kind of this moment where he comes out, and that's when he tells Sirius, like, I want you to keep me alive for this entire time, and then we're going to revive Citra. And Sirius is like, your feelings might change in 112 years. And he's like, they won't.
They won't, yeah.
And so he kind of goes ahead with it. And, it really makes me think, if he had frozen himself, he would have woken up 112 years later, and somebody else would have become the leader of this
That's right.
colony.
Yeah. Well,
Um,
so was he the last live? Not there was people on the ship deadish, but was he the last live person on that ship? Right?
no,
Was he the only one? Okay, there were more.
yeah, there was
Okay,
people that
I'm
were alive on
confusing
the
that
ship.
with whatever the Tonus girl's name was.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, he had like a full ship
Okay.
of
Yep.
humans that were alive. And so it's kind of this interesting thought of, if he had frozen himself, he would get out, someone else would be leading the colony, and Rowan, being who Rowan is, he's not good at not being a leader. Like he kind of has to be in control a little
It's
bit.
in his nature for sure.
Yeah. And so, he would get out of there and he would not be having a good time because some other asshole would be leading the colony, probably not doing a good job. And then Citra would wake up and he'd be all like kind of, maybe not like pissed off, but like eventually pissed off. Eventually like they would want to be the leaders and the other guy wouldn't be giving it up.
Yep.
And so, it's kind of interesting for him to go through with this this process and be alive for 100 some odd years, become like probably the undisputed leader of that colony.
Yeah.
And then Citra wakes up, he turns a corner, and now they are like the king and queen of this colony, essentially. Like they are like, they're like royalty.
They're it.
Yeah. And so I thought, how completely different that could have gone.
For sure.
He probably also didn't want to turn any corners, because when you start turning a lot of corners, you start to look weird, and he didn't want
to get this weird facial structure, and your bones look weird, and your face is all white and glowy. Yeah, I wouldn't want that either if I was supposed to wake up on the other side with my significant other,
Right. And just a side note, what's funny about all that, about the whole process of being revived and your face going all weird, now that I think about it, doesn't someone who's gone through that a bunch of times, doesn't the way the book describes their face sound a lot like an alien?
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
Like
very, very, very gaunt, and their bones are poking out, and their face gets this weird round look to it. Absolutely. I totally
very
agree.
like all the features, like everything that makes your face very defined kind of goes away, and it becomes like this plasticky, like,
your skin's all stretched out, all weird. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And that's, I don't know, that's funny to think about. Like, what if aliens are just people who
came from the Scythe books?
Yeah. I think, we'll talk more about that scene too when we get to the other part of the ending. What did you think about Citra's kind of relationship with Pozuelo? Not romantic relationship, but just like friendship with Pozuelo.
Yeah, friendship. I really liked it, and I think that what you have written down here, I think you can explain better. So I'm gonna have you do it because you already talked about it. But I think that their friendship and the way that it started was really cool, and I think that Citra and Pozuelo could have, and again, this is always stuff you wrote down. I think they could have done a little bit more. Citra could have maybe said more, but go ahead, talk about it because you're ready for it.
Oh, I mean, really, that's it. I just think that Citra had so much time with Pozuelo.
Yeah.
And she's got, like, I think she was there for months before she finally was able to toss him up against the wall or whatever. And she had so much time to explain everything that happened to her, and that she could have gotten him on the side of her and Rowan. But the thing that I thought was interesting about Pozuelo was he is very much, he is like the closest you can get to a rogue Scythe. Like he's willing to hide them from the other Scythedom. He's willing to like put all this other stuff on the line to make sure that they complete their goal to take down Goddard.
Yep. But he still has his limits, right? He still has
Yeah.
his things that he's not willing to go past.
He's got his limits, and you know it's he's definitely got his limits, but I think that over all the other sides that we've seen up to this point, besides maybe Faraday, even Faraday was pretty strict though. He like this guy Pozuelo is just like, I am willing to hide you from the Scythedom.
Yeah.
Which in the first book was almost unheard of.
Yeah.
So I thought it was pretty cool to meet him and see these other sides that are out there. And it sucked seeing him get betrayed by his apprentice or whatever, or his junior Scythe.
Yep.
When the junior Scythe told Goddard and everybody where they were.
Yeah.
So we talked about Citra and Grayson's reunion. I thought it was funny that Alighieri literally lived in the Shire. Like the book said that where he lived was where Tolkien got the idea for the Shire.
I missed that. I totally missed that.
Yeah, it was in like, I think it's called Welshire or something like that. And then Faraday, the greatest of all sides, when he sees Citra come off the ship, he runs up to her and kneels before her and weeps.
Yeah.
And this was like such a powerful part of the book. I was like, man, this is so good. And Citra's like terrified. She thinks that he's somebody
Crazy
running up to try to attack her.
Yep.
She's about to glean him. But yeah, their whole reunion was so good. And like I said, the narrator did such a good job of making them sound like so tearful.
Yeah.
What other ones do you got here? What are some of your other favorite moments when you think about this book? The parts that really stuck with you?
Probably I would say parts that stick with me. I've got Goddard is supplanted, right? That's one that was here. And so again, like I so despise Goddard. Everything about him. Like I don't even want to talk about him. That's how much I don't like Goddard. But
Yeah.
I think that the way that Rand brought him back right after this massacre that Rowan pulled off, destroyed him, decapitated Goddard, and she takes Rowan's best friend Tiger, right, and supplants Goddard with his memories and his brain, or other way around, his body, Goddard's brain. Right, that's what that's about, right? That's why is that why you put that there? Is this different?
Well, so first Goddard's brain gets put in Tiger's body.
Yep.
And then at the end, Tiger's brain gets put in Goddard's body.
Okay, I don't know why I'm missing that piece, but like I don't remember that.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really, I don't.
Oh,
I was thinking when I read that right there, Goddard is supplanted. I was thinking about the whole Tiger thing. I honestly do not remember that.
no way. Yeah.
way.
Rand took Goddard's body.
Yeah.
And it was like one of the last couple chapters. And Tiger like wakes up and he's like trying to like feel his face, and he's like, wait, like my face doesn't feel like my face, and like my eyes don't feel like my eyes, and like that's not my hair.
Yeah.
And then he like reaches down and he sees his hands, like, oh, there's my hands, like my hands are there. And then Rowan comes in the room and she like leans over and she goes, hello, Tiger. And then that's like the end of his.
Okay, yeah,
Yeah.
that's probably why because now that you said it, I remember the these aren't my eyes thing and whatnot, but I never clicked that, so never mind on that one. But now I know.
So yeah, that happens, and Faraday realizes there will always be another Goddard and enacts the fail safe. It is a giant tuning fork that comes out of the mountain and bursts every side's ring and spreads. plagues. What did you think about how this ending kind of got resolved here? Like how all of this wrapped up with
This failsafe.
Faraday at the end and the failsafe and like
I thought it was right along where I thought it was going to be. Like I figured it was going to be something that had the potential to stop the side them. I mean, I guess to a point, right? To stop the side them craziness, their actions, like Goddard actions in the New Order sides and whatnot.
yeah.
And but I thought it was really well done at the end. I thought that it worked out really well, the way that they planted the plagues in there and how it all tied together. I thought it was good, and I think that it's something that really worked out well in the end. I mean, not that, a lot of people are going to die, but it eventually, I mean, it stops that part of the side them, right? That's destroying the order of the natural way of people's deaths and how they're supposed to die. So I enjoyed it. And then of course, with that, we have Faraday's mercy gleanings, right? I'm just going to jump right into that.
Yeah.
So with that, Faraday kind of gets back his mojo, I guess, as this very honorable, very wise Scythe, and he's going around and he's like doing these mercy gleanings, right? There's somebody that's sick with bubonic plague, right? He's gonna die, right? He's got a month to live, very sick, very ill, very much pain, and he goes to them and says, listen, I'm gonna take your pain away, and like, this is not your fault, like I'm just gonna help you, and helps the family, and he gleans his person. It's all in love, right? It's all in a very well placed context, and everybody's happy about it. And so that's really cool. And that's what I feel like, that's what the honorable sides should be doing, right? Like that's what they should carry on, is that kind of just doing everything in love and caring for the person, and looking out for everybody's best interests, I guess, even though there's death involved, right?
Right. Yeah, his mercy gleanings were another part where I got a little choked up for sure, because he's, like you said, he's taken care of people, and it's not about gleaning people to take care of population anymore. It's about this showing mercy,
stopping pain.
Stopping pain. And he goes to this guy's house, and he's dying horribly, and the family is like, yes, please glean him. Yes, please glean him. And he turns to the guy. He's like, no, do you want me to glean you?
Yeah.
And the guy like nods. And so he's like, I chose for you a special balm that is like extremely euphoric. It's probably like the best drug ever.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it kills him. And he's like, he basically sits him down with his entire family around him and tells him like what a fantastic job he did with his life. And like this, I think it was like a restaurant or something the guy owned. He's like, you did a fantastic job with your business. Like your family is so proud of you. You've raised like several sons and daughters that are all proud of you. And like everybody loves you. And he's just like telling him like all these like beautifully nice things.
Yeah.
As he's going out, and like the family is all in tears. I'm in tears.
Yeah.
And like this guy is just like on his way out. And then we see Faraday get up, and the family still goes to kiss his ring. Not to, it's kind of turned, because it's not to get immunity anymore. It's out of a sign of respect, like people
for the Scythe. Yeah.
And Faraday tells them like it no longer holds immunity for you, and she's like, that's not why I kissed
Doesn't matter. Yeah.
And I thought that was such a great moment. And the failsafe in general, I thought it was such a good way to kind of, like, it literally is the failsafe. Like it is the big red button at the end of the book where like nobody can do anything to stop this. Like not only is it out of the Thunderhead's hands, it's out of the Scythe's hands. Scythes are dying, but it is kind of the best option. Like people are still having a 40% chance to live to 300.
Yep.
So it's really not that bad when you look at the numbers. But yeah, I really like the way that wound up, and just kind of the solution that Neal came up with for that.
Yep, I agree.
Of course, Grayson saying goodbye to the Thunderhead was tear jerking. It was awful. I mean,
Yeah, it
awful in the
was.
best way. It was
Yeah, it
super
was
sad.
awful in the best way. That's a good way to describe it. I say there's this last one here too, and I'm pretty sure this is Citra talking to Rowan. This is after she wakes up, right? When they've made their journey, they're where they want to be, and Citra's like confused and whatnot. She's like, "We were just running from something. When was that?" And Rowan looks at her and she says, and he says, "Only a moment ago. It's been 112 years, 127 years." And he says, "Only a moment ago, only a moment ago." That was super powerful.
Ooh,
Super powerful.
dude, I just got chills. Like,
Yeah, me
that-
too.
that is like, I think, you know, I think this might have this definitely has like at least one of my favorite endings of all time in a series.
Yeah.
But those those parting words at the end of this book are so perfectly placed,
Yeah.
and it's just so, oh, it's just enough to like tug on your heart, but
Yep,
also to
yep.
let you know it's like just enough emotion to let you know that he hasn't changed his mind about Citra,
Yeah.
and that they're like still together, and that they made it to the planet, and that they're both there. And it's just like, oh, it's such a good quote.
Yeah, it
It's
is. It
such
is.
a good
It is.
quote. Yeah, it gives me chills every time, and
Yep, me too.
I'm super excited to see if Neal Shusterman does do one of the short stories of them being on this planet and just them seeing their
I hope so,
lives.
man.
Because I would love to just see them together. And you know, a lot of a lot of people kind of have an issue with the end of the book, saying that at the end, Citra had like just randomly decided to be with Rowan. Not like randomly decided to be with Rowan, but that she was like on this like headstrong take down Goddard kind of mission. And then as soon as she saw Rowan, she was like, let's get out of here. And they thought that was kind of random. But you know, I disagree. I think
I would disagree with that too, 100%. I think it's from the origins, from the start of the series. They've started to kindle their relationship and their, I guess, love for each other. Obviously, that didn't come out until later, but I'm sure that's what you were
right.
gonna say.
But I think that, you know, the entire book and even all of the second book, Citra was worried about Rowan all the time.
Yeah.
And,
Yeah.
you know, even when she was with Posuelo, she kept asking, how is Rowan? How is
Yep.
Rowan? And then she went as far to ask Jericho, she's like, how is Rowan doing? And, you know, I think even though she did have this mission and she was very like headstrong about it, at the foundation layer of everything, she had to be with Rowan, and Rowan was really all she cared about at that point.
Yeah.
And so, you know, initially she says that she's not going to go on the rocket, that she's not going to go to space, and then Rowan shows up and she decides to go to space. And I think that's because she didn't want to go to space because she knew that Rowan was still here on Earth.
Yep.
And, you know, as soon as she saw Rowan, nothing else mattered anymore. That was the whole reason she was staying down on the ground, was to find Rowan after this whole thing happened. Once she finds him, nothing else matters. And
Yep.
she's like,
That's it.
fuck
She's
it.
got the, yeah,
Let's go to
exactly.
space.
Exactly. So I'm good now. You're here. I'm fine.
All right, so I have this section talking about future book questions, but really they're all just like kind of the ideas about the short stories. Like, I would love a book about what Rowan's journey to space was like, or what their
Yep.
lives were like after
That would be
arriving on the planet.
my first thought about a short story would be that one right there.
Yeah, or even a series about the years leading up to humans becoming immortal and
Yeah,
releasing the Thunderhead, just like what the years were like as they were like developing all this technology. You know what I mean?
yeah.
Like just
Oh,
like
for
the
sure.
humans, like before scythes were a thing, like just what life was
They
like.
start getting close enough to the AI where, they're like, holy crap, this is gonna progress.
And then oh, Neal has also said he might do an origin story of Curie. That would be cool.
That would be
Uh,
cool.
we talked about the movie for Scythe. There's also a movie for Unwind that's in the works.
Oh, wow.
That'll be horrifying.
Yeah, that'll be terrifying. I can't wait to see it.
Yeah, I know, right? Oh yeah, and then I had like this crazy, just like this crazy like what if theory that we'll end on is what if the story had gone this way? What if from the end of the second book, from Citra and Rowan being in the chamber, Citra had gotten pregnant, but they had gotten frozen under the water. So like
Yeah,
the baby is kept safe. And then all through book 3, she's pregnant. And before she dies, before she gets on the rocket ship, like on the atoll or something, she gives birth to her and Rowan's baby, and then she dies. She goes deadish. Rowan's got the baby, and he's got her like slung over another shoulder. He's running up to the rocket, and he gets in there, and he has to put her into cryo freeze. And then for 112 years, he's got this like baby that he's raising, and obviously it grows and turns the corner and turns the
yep,
corner.
yep.
And she wakes up, and Rowan is sitting there holding her hand, of course, and like only a moment to go, only a moment to
Yep,
go.
yep.
And then he's like, I'd like to introduce you to your son. And
Whoa!
it's this son that's turned a corner like
It's like
twice
already
now.
112 years old.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh,
that'd be
dude.
crazy, dude.
That
That
would
would be
that would have been
freaking crazy.
crazy. Yes.
Absolutely crazy.
Man, so let's just make some parting words about this book, man. I think, during this reread, I was so surprised by how completely in love with this series I am. And I think this must go on my top 5 series now.
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
this,
for sure.
I
It's up
I
there
let
in mine for sure. Top 3, no doubt.
definitely. And I think that I really liked it before, but now during this reread, catching all the things that I kind of caught this time around and seeing all the things that Neal Shusterman did with this story, like he's gone like way up on my like respect for certain authors list.
Yeah, yeah.
Just what a mastermind. I would love to be able to ask him so many questions
For sure.
and pick his brain about this series. It's such a well-crafted series that you can tell he put a lot of love into.
Yeah,
And
a lot of
put a
love,
lot
a
of
lot of thought, a lot of time.
yes, a lot of planning,
Yep.
and just a lot of himself. I'm
Yeah,
sure,
of course. Absolutely.
some of these things, like we talked about the charter regions, like he had to have just been sitting there and like thinking
It's like,
about that
wait,
forever.
I can put this in there.
Yeah, and so he's got to have like parts of himself in these books, and
Which
I
is how
think
it
he
should
just
be.
did a
I think that's what makes these books so incredible, is that exactly, right? There's a personal aspect to it that really speaks out to a lot of the audiences.
yes, definitely. So yeah, thank you, Neal Shusterman, for these books. Any parting words you have for this book? Your overall just feeling of joy for these books?
Yeah, that's it. That's really what I would say. There's an overall, once you get to the end, right? You've understood, you've read it all, you've felt it all. It is just an overwhelming feeling of joy. I mean, that's really what it boils down to at the end. It's an incredible journey that I would do again in a heartbeat, and I will do again in the future, no doubt.
Yes,
I
definitely.
recommend it to anybody that is even remotely interested in this kind of like sci-fi young adult stuff. It is
Yeah.
so good. It is so good.
Well said. All right, everyone, thank you so much for listening to the show. And thank you to those of you that have just been part of the community over there on Twitter. We're having so much fun bringing you this content and could not do it without you, the listeners. If you want to help out our channel, please drop us a like and subscribe down below, as well as a comment with whatever books you would like to see discussed on the show. You can also follow us on Twitter @FilesFantasy to keep up with us there. The next episode will be a discussion of what books we should read next that have been recommended by you guys and from other podcasters that have been sitting on our Audible wish list, and then we'll continue with the Dresden Files books 4 through 6. Until then, resonate well and true. All rejoice.
I'll rejoice. Yeah, I would have
Okay.
stopped you and said something if it
It was all janky.